Right, this is take two because for some reason Facebook kicked me off when I tried this last time. So fingers crossed this is going to work. So welcome back. This is episode 15 of the Tempest Rising podcast. We're live. Everything is working as far as I'm aware. And as long as we don't get kicked off again, hopefully this is going to be of interest to you. Because today's topic is this is what happens when I run out of strong. So today I want to touch on an interesting topic and cover some deep psychological concepts around the idea of your inner world. And it's something I've been doing some work on recently, and I wanted to share it with you. Now, we all have our ideal traits and characteristics, the parts of our personality that we like, the ones that we try to show up as, the ones that we want to be known for. But the thing is, as humans, we're all about balance. And in trying so hard to be one thing, we end up repressing something else, which tips the balance inside of us. And the more we try to be that one thing, the quicker we reach our capacity for it. And when that happens, when we reach our capacity, we can't be it anymore. So the balance has to shift another way. So for me personally, I value strength, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's how I like to show up in life. But there are times when I push and I push and I push until all of the strength is gone. And what I'm left with is weakness. So the balance has shifted. And my complete disdain for weakness in both myself and others makes this extremely traumatic. It brings out a whole myriad of emotions, and that only serves to worsen the experience. It's like everything just explodes. And then it takes a while for the dust to settle and things to calm down. But when it does, the process starts again. We go back to being strong. We start working at capacity again. And it creates this roller coaster of emotions, and it makes it really hard to find a level balance. But here's the thing. It's normal because inside of everybody is the potential for everything. So for everything you think you are also the opposite, because one thing cannot exist without the other. You can't have light without dark, and you can't have good without bad. So you can try as much as you want to be something, but eventually you'll reach your capacity and the opposite will creep in. You'll see it in other people, you'll see it in your day-to-day life, and it'll annoy you because it's something you fear so much inside of yourself, and you repress it. Because life is a projection of what you have inside, so that repression comes out in your day-to-day life. Any out of character actions, things you do that are seemingly not normal, they're not anomalies. They're part of your personality. They're the part you want to hide. So for me, I'll be strong until I can't do it anymore. And then I'll break and the week comes out and I'll end up crying because I dropped my lunch on the kitchen floor, which happened a few weeks ago. So the more you try to be one thing, the more you repress the opposite thing. And the repression makes things worse. The more you repress it, the stronger it becomes, and it starts to show up more and more, usually in dramatic fashion. And then you start to embody all of the things you try to hide until you can tip the scales back and revert to your former pattern. So out of character actions just mean that you've reached your capacity and you've tipped the scales. So the main lesson here is to understand that you are everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, all of it exists inside of you. And to try and hide an element of that is to deprive yourself of wholeness. My coach is always saying to me that wholeness is happiness. And I agree with him, because you can't be happy until you stop fighting and you start accepting. And I'm not saying you can't change and become more, because I always say that that is the whole point of life. But change has to start with acknowledging the issues, accepting it for what it is, and then aspiring to become more, to work on increasing your capacity. You'll never ever be free of the things that are keeping you stuck until you accept that they exist within you and that it's okay for them to exist, because it's part of being human. It's this massive technical spectrum of everything, and it's all inside of you. Now, I'm just touching on this here because it's a very, very deep subject based around the psychology of Carl Jung. And his idea is that we all carry a shadow, and inside of that shadow are the things that we don't like about ourselves. He calls it the anima animus, which I think is a better name than shadow. It sounds way cooler. But inside of this shadow are those things that we don't like, the things we try to hide. And as long as those things stay buried in the shadow, then we'll never be able to work on them, and they'll forever cause problems in our life. They'll keep popping up again and again and again. And society only serves to create more repression of those things because of rules and expectations, and forcing us to be something we think we should be instead of who we really are. And it's a really fascinating subject, and it opens up a whole new way of thinking when you start to work on it. But it's also quite unnerving to face the things in you that you like to pretend don't exist. So I'm going to get you to start with something small. I'm going to give you a call to action today just to start you on this a little bit. So if you get a piece of paper and divide it in two, split it, line right down the middle. On one side of it, write down everything you try to hide about yourself. So all of your perceived negatives, all of those things that you think are bad. And then on the other side, write the opposite. Write the things you are proud of, the things that you perceive to be good. Because if you have one, you will have the other. So if I'm weak, I know I'm also strong. If I'm awkward, I'm also confident. If I'm mean, I'm also kind. Because the world is about duality. We are about duality. So there will always be an opposite. And if you can identify the bad, because bad and good are all perception, then you're going to find the good. And then you're able to accept yourself for all that you are. So that is all for this week. It is a fairly deep topic, so I don't want to go too much into it, but I would be interested to hear your thoughts on it, particularly anyone that has studied psychology and looked into the work of Jung, because I think it's fascinating. So either comment on the video or send me a message and we can discuss this. I'm going to put up the links to an audio version and also the blog post that accompanies this podcast for anybody that likes to listen rather than watch. And then I'm going to be back next week with another episode. And in the meantime, if there are any questions you have on anything pretty much, or any topics that you'd be interested in learning more about, just send me a message and I'll get it covered. Other than that, I will see you soon.